welcome to today's conversation presentation. This is our third for 2022. And for the first of these presentations this year, it's not raining in Sydney, so it's really very good. That's where I'm from. And I'm a member of the awareness raising team. So just a reminder, it's not a Q&A. If you do want to ask a question, then put it in the chat and somebody will get back to you. And if you're new to ACRAF and we haven't got your email, would you mind just adding that as well? And just a request for everybody to mute themselves. Thanks. So before we commence, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land each of us are on today. You might silently name the land where you are. I'm on Wongal land of the Eora Nation. As we acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, we acknowledge our gratitude that we share this land. We acknowledge our sorrow for the costs of that sharing. And we acknowledge our hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together. I extend this respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander persons who may be present here today, especially to our guest. So today we welcome Sherry Balcombe, a Yalanghi, Olkola and Djabaguy woman from Far North Queensland. And Sherry's been working with the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry in Melbourne for the last 12 years. Wow. And how appropriate that we welcome you, Sherry, on the eve of National Sorry Day and the first week of a new government which has committed to the Uluru Statement of the Heart. We sense a better future for our First Nations people and really hope that this becomes a reality. Sherry is the mother of 4 children of whom she is very proud. She and her husband live in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and she is extremely passionate about her Aboriginal heritage, culture, and her Catholic faith. Our topic today is human trafficking, stolen wages. How common is it? And during the conversation, Sherry will share some of her personal family stories of the impact of this injustice. No doubt in her current and past roles, she has had first-hand experience of those who have had their wages stolen. Those who suffer from stealth in wages come from across all areas of society, covering all ages, race and gender. It's a very current and serious issue. So Sherry, over to you, and we really look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for taking the time to contribute for us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'd like to start off too by doing an acknowledgement. So as we gather on this sacred land, let us acknowledge that we're standing on country for which the members and elders of the local Aboriginal community and their ancestors have been custodians for thousands and thousands of years, on which we've performed age-old ceremonies, celebrations, initiations and renewals. We acknowledge their living culture, their spiritual relationship with this land and the unique role in the life of this country. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm currently on Wurundjeri land in the Kulin Nations in Victoria. And I'd also like to say I've worked at the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry for 19 years. 19 years, and I'm an Olkola and Djabaguy woman, but I was born on Wurundjeri land. This will never be my home. My spiritual home is Far North Queensland. When I was asked to come and do a talk on stolen wages, I thought, yep, that's something that's very close to my heart. When they were first introduced in Queensland, because no other states have done any compensation for stolen wages. My father, he applied for it. He was born in Yarrabah Mission and worked from the age that he could walk. He actually had a bone disease. He had osteomyelitis in his leg, but that didn't stop him working him. He had to ride the horse and cart around town and deliver wood. So, you know, everybody that lived in the mission, they had to work. There was no sitting around children. Even when we had like the dormitories, that's what the dormitories were. They were to train the Aboriginal children on how to work and to be useful, And I remember when my father, he first applied for it. My father was, he was born in Yarrabah Mission. His parents were both sent away at the age of 5. His mother was sent to Western Australia and he never seen her again. His father was sent off, he was a mechanic, so he was sent off to work for the war effort. And so my father, as a 5-year-old, was left in Yarrabah Mission and he was too white for the dormitories. So he was just left in the mission and it was up to the other people that were living there to help him survive. And he's very grateful that he had a family that stepped in. And as he said to me, it was he was lucky that the father there was a hunter, because that's how they survived. They survived on bush tucker. The only meat that they had, they'd wait for the barge to come across and it'd have a big bullock on there that was green and mouldy, because you've got to remember we're in Cairns, back in the 30s and 40s. It was very hot, it's a tropical, and the meat would be mold. It'd be covered in green mold, and they'd be cutting the green off of it so that they could have some decent meat. So he was grateful to this family that helped him survive that. I think my father had a really difficult time. He said he would have loved to have been in the dormitories. At least he would have got 3 meals a day. But he was forced to work in the mission like everybody else. And when we actually came to the stolen wages, he said, well, I'm going to put in for it. And we put in for it, and my father was rejected, which I must say I really got my back up about. And I got onto him and I said, listen here. I said, my father has been dispossessed his whole life. This is a matter of principle. It's not to do with money, it's principle. And they said, we don't have any document of your father, because he was too white for the dormitories. So they didn't put him in there. And so we had to get, and there was a 90-year-old woman, which is absolutely amazing in Aboriginal culture because not many live past 70. 90-year-old woman who did a stacked deck. And that was the family that my father lived with as a child. And she did a stacked deck, which was approved. And so I think, he was given $5,000, sign on the dotted line, and that's it. Don't ever come back for more. And that's what they were given. Which, if you imagine not having, how many of us have, that we have inheritance, that you have things that are left to you. Our people didn't have that. And I actually thought I'd like to start by sharing my screen. I should have put this back to the start. Well, what's happened now? This wasn't like this 2 seconds ago when we just checked it out. It was all good. Oh, I know what it is. Hang on. Okay, I know what it was. This is what we've done. We blow up. All right. Everybody
Sherry,
see that?
if you want to go on to the slideshow prompt, and it will also make it the right size.
That's all right. I've
Okay.
fixed it up now. I know what I'm doing. And so I thought it'd be important to give you a bit of background. So what's the purpose of stolen wages? The stolen wages were used to build Queensland. And the government, owing to Aboriginal people, is now conservatively valued at $500 million, for which, for much of the last century, the Queensland government controlled most of Aboriginal people's lives. They had no control over their lives. They were used as slaves. When you're forced to work, you don't get paid, you can't leave, and you don't have a choice, then that is slavery. Hello. Oh. Sorry, so my assistant isn't in today, so I've got the phone ringing. So what happened to the 190 million stolen wage case in Queensland? The Queensland government settled a long-running wages case for $190 million in 2019. The entitlements are being distributed to more than 10,800 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people for wages earned between 1939 and 1972. Now, I'm actually going to talk about one of my family members. So how did this affect our people? So Aboriginal people have been attempting to receive unpaid wages and savings since they were stolen as late as the 1980s. And these stolen wages pushed poverty and health problems into several generations of Aboriginal people, which continues today. Now, I have a cousin in Queensland, and when I was up there visiting him at Christmas time, I said to him, he actually, when all of this stolen wages stuff started, the government came to him and said, oh, yeah, we'll pay you stolen wages. Here's $5,000, sign this piece of paper, and then you're finished. And he said, I refused to do that because he'd lived and worked in the mission his whole life. His whole adult life had been working there, and he had nothing to show for it. The house that he lived in was owned by the government, and he had no wages. And so he actually took, his name is Conrad Yateman. So if anybody would like to check it, they certainly can. It's all over the internet. Conrad Yateman. He took the Queensland government to court because he said that's not enough, and he lost. And so what happened was the Queensland government actually sent him a bill for $20 million. Oh. $20 million. He's a man that he's lived in a mission all his life. He's never got paid any money. He's barely getting by and surviving on the pension. They had 5 children, and so it was ridiculous. So what he did was after that had happened, he went back and they did another. Oh, this phone. I'm going to take it off the book. Sorry, people. So he went back and he did the second lot of where they did a class action and they pulled a lot of Aboriginal people together. He wasn't the forerunner in it. He sort of wanted to stand back because he'd already gone through many, many years of fighting with the government and the terrible toll that takes on your health, on you as a person. And it was just settled last year. I went and seen him and I said, how did you go? You know, like, did you get a good payout? I hope you got $1 million or, you know, a few $100,000 at least. And he didn't. He didn't. He got just what everybody else had been paid out. So all those years of him holding back and not getting the money and taking the government to court, and the heartache that went with that just was a waste of his time. And it was really sad. Anyway, when I was there at Christmas time, he brought out his paperwork and he had a big folder full of paperwork where he'd been fighting the government. And this is one of the paper he gave me, and he said he's happy for me to share it in places like this. Hang on one second. I'm just going to unplug this telephone because it just keeps ringing. That's it. That'll stop it now. And this says, this is a letter from the superintendent at the mission. They're sending him off to work. Now, this is a young man. I think he was 14 years old. And it says, re Conrad Yateman, in response to your telegram, accepting the lad from here, the above lad will leave Yarrabah tomorrow to come to you. We enclose agreement number, and you will note he is to be paid £4 a week plus keep. £1 a week to be paid as pocket money, pocket money book enclosed, and £3 a week to be forwarded to this office quarterly for his savings account. We trust Conrad arrives safely and proves himself satisfactorily to you. Yours sincerely, the Superintendent. Now, when I spoke to Conrad, he said what would happen is they would go up because they kept the wages and they'd have to sign in the book that the wages had gone there. And then they would say, he said, you'd go up and you'd say to them, can I have a new pair of pants? He said, we haven't had one for 2 years. And they'd look them up and down and say, no, they'll do you for another 12 months. See you later. So, you know, they were holding it in a pocketbook supposedly for him, but you had no access to it. The Queensland Base Hospital is built on Aboriginal stolen wages, and so is the Townsville Base Hospital. And there's many, many other government and community places that are built on Aboriginal stolen money. This is a photo of him at the time. This young lad that they took away from his family and made to work. A handsome young fella. So here we go. Here's a perpetual cycle of dependence and poverty that come from stolen wages. Lack of education because they didn't want us educated enough, because when we're too educated, we fight back. A lack of property, assets and inheritance. We don't have inheritance. You know, our parents were flat out surviving and putting food in our mouths. You know, my father was uneducated. You know, not great jobs you get when you're uneducated. The stereotyping, racism, emotional poverty, loss of culture, divisions in Black community and resentment towards white community, increased violence and drug and alcohol problems. And these are the perpetual cycle that happens. You know, and we also have intergenerational trauma that's caused through these things. Now, I know we haven't got long, so I was thinking I'd like to even have a look here. We have, this is what I blew it up for. We're looking at, this is another document from Queensland and the removal of Aboriginal children. Now, I want you to keep in mind that when they removed Aboriginal children from their families and they took them to missions, they removed them from their families. They were not allowed to speak their language. They were not allowed to have contact with family. They weren't allowed to practice ritual or ceremony, and they were virtually had their identity stolen from them. And here is a great example. This one, this is from 1934, 1912 to 1934. And these are kids. A letter from the Rossville Station, Cairns Police District, dated the 26th of the 9th, 1915, to the Protector of Aborigines, Cooktown, lists 13 Aboriginal children from Rossville, China Camp and Bloomsfield River who are to be removed to Yarrabah. There's Ivy, who was 7 years old, a female. Charlie, 17-year-old, male. Jimmy, a 10-year-old male. Mickey, a 7-year-old male. Milligabee, another 7-year-old female. Billy, a 9-year-old male. Nicholas, a 15-year-old male. Butcher, a 9-year-old male. Walker, a 10-year-old male. Nipper, a 7-year-old male. Ruby, a 9-year-old female. Minnie, a 17-year-old female. And Elma, a 5-year-old female. I just realised this Minnie is my great-grandmother. Minnie is my great-grandmother. And the removals in 1917. And this is a document of their names, Clara Matthews and children. And they were removed from Surat, Taroom. Billy, Banago, and Henry, Nellie, and children moved to Taroom. Murray's. And you can just see here, you know, here's Dick from Mount Barnet, moved to Yarrabah. When they moved them, you've got to remember that they didn't speak the language of the people they were going to. They, you know, our languages, we have over 500 languages. And so when they removed these children from their homes, they not only lost their family, but it was like they were going to foreign countries. They didn't understand the language. They couldn't read the country, and they didn't identify with that country because it wasn't their home. So it was a lot more than just, you know, they didn't pick them up and take them away, and they lived in a nice little house with a white picket fence with their brothers and sisters, and they lived happily ever after, because they put them into dormitories, and then they separated them in age groups so that they didn't have, the older girls didn't have contact with the little ones. The older children, they would teach how to be useful. The girls cooking, cleaning, sewing, housekeeping, child rearing, and the boys fence making, horses, running cattle. They would teach them all of those kind of things, fixing fences, so that as they got older, then they would be useful. And by the time they were about between 12 and 14, children would be sent away from the missions to go and work for people. My two uncles were taken away from my grandmother at the age of 12 and 14, and I have a stack of paperwork like that, where she spoke to the Aboriginal, she paid somebody who confessed himself to be the Aboriginal helper, and she paid him £1 back in 1937 to write a letter to the government to say, please, can I have my children back? I have got a job for them and they can live with me. They will not come back and do nothing. I have jobs for them. And the police were sent there to collect my brothers because she refused to send them back. And they were taken and continued to be used as slaves. And so every Aboriginal person in Australia has this in their history.
Sherry, we've just got 5 more minutes.
Yep. This is the litigation. This is from 2018. There's still the litigation commenced on the 19th of August. Even though the stolen wages repatriation reopened last year, the government still siphoned off over $20 million to an education fund for Aboriginal children. Why are we having to pay for our children to be educated out of our stolen wages? You steal the wages and then you say, oh no, we're gonna siphon it into education, so you should be happy with that. 55.4 million was set aside to repair the significant and long-lasting damage inflicted on the workers whose wages were stolen. Who's it helped? Certainly didn't help my uncle. And so all this, you know, this is how this all ties into the stolen generation. Because when they were stolen, they weren't stolen to sit up and look. They were stolen so that they could be reprogrammed, get their Aborigines and be used as slaves. And so the removal of so many Aboriginal children from their mothers, families and communities inflict profound grief, suffering and loss that continues to affect them, their families and their descendants. And so the White Australia policy was in place in the Australian government until 1973, before it was abolished. We had genocide inflicted on our race. They tried to breed us out. Still here, and we're not going anywhere. And if anything, I think now we're stronger than we ever have been in Australian society, especially after the starting of our government. Yes. And so social justice is what faces you in the morning. It is awakening in a house that with adequate water supply, cooking facilities and sanitation. It is the ability to nourish the children and feed them to go to school, where their education not only equips them for employment, but also reinforces their knowledge and appreciation of their cultural inheritance. It is the prospect of genuine employment, of good health, a life of choice and opportunities free from discrimination. Now, people, I think we're really at the moment, I'll stop this, the moment we're standing an absolutely incredible time. We're about to push that door open. We've got our foot in the door and we're about to step in. This is, we're about to change the tapestry of this country for all time. You know, we're about to do something that's going to be profound. We're going to change the history in this country. And next year we're going to a referendum. And I ask you, please speak to everybody that you know that's a voting age and ask them to be on this journey. We cannot do it alone. We need your support, you know. And the big thing, do you want to look back to your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and be proud that you stepped up and that you were there with us? You've seen something that was wrong and you did something about it. In 1967, we had the churches with us. We need you with us now. We're about to change this country for all time, and I ask you to please walk that journey with us. Thank you.
Sherry, thank you so much. Sherry, thank you so much. You have just shared so personally your experience, and there is so much for us to learn. And I, along with you, but with no understanding like you have, hope that next year the voice, the treaty and the truth will become a reality, and that compensation that some people in Queensland gained will be shared through across Australia. So thank you.
Also compensation for the stolen generation.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So thank you so much. And we don't have to offer you a challenge from ACRAF. Sherry's given us one, that we do something to ensure that that referendum that we hope will come next year will get bipartisan support and will be passed. Thanks, Cindy, so much for organising Sherry to come to us today. And thanks everyone for attending. Our next conversation is on the 29th of June. And the topic will be, and it's a really good follow on from what Sherry's given us today, is seeking a national compensation scheme victims of serious trafficking crime. The presenter, a surprise. So we hope to see you on the 29th. And again, Sherry, thank you so much, and every blessing to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation to be invited. And thank you for listening. Can you send me a copy?
Yes, Sherry, for sure. And I'll touch base with you again. Thank you. You go and talk to Joan and Joan.
I will. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.